but my purpose is just to create content and help spread the word about things that I love to do.
Yeah, Scott Turner, and I'm VP of Marketing for a company here locally in Austin called Orca Config, and interested to talk to you guys today.
Howdy, everybody. I'm Brian Wallace, President and founder of NowSourcing. We're one of the world's leading infographic design agencies, and we live and breathe startups all day long.
Hello, everyone. I'm Greg Baroth. I have a social media marketing agency in LA called Monogram Artists, and I help people create content.
I'm Tom Chernaik, CEO of CommandPost out of New York, and I help with content marketing strategies and insights, but we actually started our company as Comply around the need for social media compliance.
Awesome. So as you see, we have just a variety of people here, and I'll start it off with, launched by LegalShield, the purpose of it is really to help businesses get up and going, but not only just like hand them paperwork, not just say, hey, here's your LLC form, here's your DBA form, but really guide them through that process and help them make better decisions when they start their business. But let's go even before that. We'll start down here on that. What made you start a business? Like, what was that thought process of starting a business?
I've started multiple, so I think that's a common thread that we'll probably hear. But I've done both, working in large environments and starting companies from scratch, and I love both at different times in my life. But it's a passion where you feel that there's something that in the world that needs fixing, and you see a clearer, better way to fix it, and you just dive in and do it. And it's about really sticking to it and making sure that you actually build something of value on the other side.
So, Greg, you have a very unique business. It's a very now sort of business. So you don't really have, I would say, like a lot of people have, like, oh, these people started businesses before in this field, and I can do that as well. You don't necessarily have that. Like, what was your, like, what kind of prompted you?
I was working at a talent agency in LA, working in the social media space in 2010 when it was kind of just starting. And I was just getting approached by the actual talent themselves, like, hey, can you just do this for me? And so rather than work at an agency and make $12 an hour, I decided that it would probably be smarter to go off on my own. And I've been trying to do businesses and the Gary Vee thing of buying and selling stuff on Craigslist and fixing it since I was 10 years old. So I've always kind of had that spirit. And so as soon as I got to a point where what I was doing on the side was making me more in a couple hours than 40 hours a week at an agency, it made no sense to continue that thing.
Absolutely. I think we all in this room can understand that sort of thinking. How about you, bro?
Yeah, so I'm the child of entrepreneurs. My family had a jewelry store, so it's kind of always been in my blood. And being a native New Yorker, it's just kind of in your bloodstream to an effect. But my parents wanted me to have the normal job and all that, so I tried that for the first 8 years of my career, and I left a CTO position and decided, hey, I really want to just go out and work for myself. I walked in one day and I said, hey guys, would you like to be my client? They said yes, and I was out of there. And phase one was basically making websites and being technologists, and then came the dawn of social media. In 2006 we started doing social. Then everybody and their mother thought, or everybody and their millennial thought that they could do social, and just because you can do Twitter doesn't mean you should go do it for a public company, and then the stock goes down, right? So around late 2008, early 2009, I noticed that the world really would crave visual content, so we've been doing infographics ever since, and I just think we can make so many more people happy than just working for a company.
So for those in the room that don't necessarily know what infographics are, can you kind of explain what infographics are?
Sure. So I usually say we just basically sell crack on the internet, but legal counsel has advised us to not exactly say that. So basically we make viral content in a visual capacity because people are not really great at telling their own story. Right? I mean, you, of course, are great at telling your story, but lots of people are humble, and you are humble, but lots of people do not develop the art of telling their story about themselves, about their businesses, and they need help from a visual capacity. And because we were doing all this social and viral content, we put all these pieces together where it's part research institute, part design firm, and really part PR/SEO firm. So getting attention from people. The internet, you basically have 2.7 seconds to get somebody's attention, and then they're onto cat videos, and you're never going back. So to get somebody's attention and hold it is truly very difficult, as I'm sure you can attest to.
Yes, absolutely.
For sure.
And now, Scott, you're you're in a different position. So
Yeah.
you're an early employee
Yep.
in the startup, and there's only like six employees.
No, there's more than that at this point because we've grown. But yeah, I'll just tell you really quickly. I have both started my own business and worked at really big companies, and then now I'm at this company, which we're still in the startup phase, and this is our entrepreneur's third time around. And if there are any IT geeks in the audience here, we do DevOps and enterprise software for IT automation of data centers, things like that. And so yeah, this is our third time around, and I know I cut you off, but
Oh no. I was just going to say, you can kind of have a different perspective of believing in a new company, like because just since you were an early employee, like you had to really believe in their vision. And I was going to say, what was it about that vision, or what was it that brought you on that helped you like make the decision, like, okay, I'll take this risk.
Yeah. And I'll say this: I had left a cushy job doing mergers and acquisitions for Dell here in town, and that was great. And I was also kind of looking out the window, saying, "Gosh, there has to be something else," and I want to do another startup again. And in my case, I didn't want to start the startup because I didn't have that great idea, but I wanted to go with some folks who had been there and done that. And so I kind of consulted around at different startups and hit it off with these guys.
So Brian, what were some of yesterday during the talk we talked about risk and having risk when it comes to starting a company.
Right.
Was there anything that popped up where you were like, maybe I shouldn't do this?
Oh, every day. Does that ever stop? When you're an entrepreneur, there's a wonderful article in Inc. magazine that talks about the psychological price of entrepreneurship. It talks about, I'm sure many of you have seen this before, so it basically describes entrepreneurship like riding a lion. So to everybody else in the room, it looks awesome. Wow, that dude's riding a lion. But you're standing there, sitting on this lion in the fetal position saying, how the hell did I get on here and how am I not going to die? So every day, legal or not, everything is a challenge with entrepreneurship. I'm the founder and CEO and the janitor at the same time, so there's always risks, especially in the early days. I mean, how many of you did social media in 2006? I used to get laughed out of boardrooms. What do you mean Twitter? We don't need Twitter and Facebook. That's ridiculous, right? So, yeah, it was definitely, it made me think twice. I would say this is our third pivot. So first was kind of tech and websites, my comfort zone, then social, which was the Wild West. But before long, we had some really great clients. We were the first place to do some stuff for John Deere before they did stuff within their own internal team. There's an entrepreneur that many of you know by the name of Jay-Z, and we did some his brands earlier in the day.
See, get a mic on.
There we go. Better?
Now that we're talking Jay-Z, you got to get on the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Jay-Z has a brand called Rockaware, so we helped a lot in social back in the day for that, along with some of the other things that I'm not sure we can all talk about. But back when Blueprint 2 was coming out, everybody heard that album?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
You're welcome.
A lot of hands in the room.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hands for Blueprint soon. No, okay.
Come on, you gotta love that album. Yeah, but when I first started doing that, I kind of thought I was insane, right? I mean, what's social media for business? And then when I saw that it was getting really crowded, and it was just a competition race to the bottom for pricing. And I remember, since we're talking legal, I am not a lawyer, but I thought about going to law school. I've always liked, believe it or not, I like contracts and I like writing my own contracts. I remember back in the day in social, somebody added an addendum to my contract saying half up front and half upon satisfactory delivery. That could be in my tombstone right now. What do you think happened with half unsatisfactory delivery? Never happened. The guy says, hey, I wasn't satisfied. So, yeah, every day from a legal and entrepreneurship perspective, it's such a challenge. Yeah.
And let's go to Greg. All right. Same thing. Starting a company, especially because you're really young.
Yeah. So for me, my parents are were government employees. My dad was a rocket scientist for JPL, and so they had no they couldn't tell me anything about starting a business, and so I just kind of had to figure it out on my own. And obviously, they don't really tell you it in school. I was in college learning about watching a VHS tape of how Taco Bell markets at the same time that I was actually working with Taco Bell on marketing on Twitter, and I was like, okay, this is kind of silly. So and I dropped out of college and started working. And yeah, I mean, so I just had to kind of figure out on my own, like, oh, do I do a DBA? Do I do an LLC? Like, how do I do this? Creating the business account with Chase or the bank, and so you can take check, all that kind of stuff that like my parents couldn't help me out with. And I just kind of had to like figure out on my own. Where something like launch would be super helpful. I mean, I still don't really know what to do. I have a bunch of side projects I'm working on that I need to figure out, and so yeah, it's interesting. Perfect.
Thank you.
So, if you could do this all again, what would you change about starting your business?
Well, just shifting back to risk with that, my startup happens to be sort of the prime example of risk. We raised a seed round, we raised an A round, we had a pivot, and we raised a Series A1. Things were going well. We built a bunch of great products. We had 30 huge brands and agencies using the product, saying that they've never seen data like this, loving the product. We were named a Gartner Cool Vendor of the Year. As we're waiting for that last tranche of investment that was supposed to come in, our lead investor called us up and said, look, I have to tell you something's happened. I've been diagnosed with cancer. I have liver and pancreatic cancer, but it's okay. I have a plan. I'm going to fight this. And David was like, he was such a fighter in his being that we were like, okay, he's got this. And 3 months later, actually 2 years this week, as we were flying back from South by Southwest, he actually died of that cancer. And we never got that final tranche of investment. And everyone expected us to just walk away. People thought, okay, that's it. It was a nice run, just pack up and go home. And my co-founder and I have worked together before this as well. Just decided to stick it out, and we wrote it out. And I should say that we probably didn't do everything the way that you would probably want to legally by the book. I mean, we sort of stretched and borrowed and did everything but steal to get through. But at the end of last year, we were actually able to work it out with our original investors, where they actually returned those shares to us. We have a new offering that's in the market, and we're out and doing it. And I'm trained as a lawyer, and I still don't know how to handle some of these things. It's challenging. It changes all the time. People are always like, "Oh, it's easy. You just raise on a convertible note." And it's like, it's not that simple. And the little decisions and the people who you bring into your family that you build as a business are so important. And people don't think about that. They're like, "Oh, somebody's going to write me a check. Great." Pause. Think about it and work through it, but you never know what's around the corner.
So a lot of times, legal is thought of as secondary when you start a business. You don't necessarily think, we're going to start a business, I need a lawyer. Let's jump in, Brian. When did legal come into the conversation for you, or how I shouldn't all phrase that. How important is legal to have legal on your side?
In short, legal is here to keep everyone off the pole. Right. Legal is so important. You should consult with legal on so many things that you do, even saying crazy things like that while you're being recorded. But I try to do viral marketing and I'm known to say things. I'm purposely doing these things, so you tweet it and talk about it and hashtag it and all of those things. I assume there's a hashtag for this event, maybe not. Needless to say, yeah, in the early formation, always consulting with legal. Whenever there is any kind of strange sort of deal, if anybody is, people have approached us to consider purchasing us, absolutely. Every step of the way, you absolutely need to be cognizant of legal. I always like I said, I enjoy contracts, so I like to look at those things, but, always read everything. What if you're signing your firstborn away? Don't just assume everything is just a boilerplate, because it's not. And people have gotten really seriously messed up over that. I mean, in the virtual reality world, there's that whole thing going on where I think Oculus got in trouble. And, the original guys who made virtual reality are just paying out millions and millions of dollars. So, yeah, I mean, protect everything you can. I mean, we do content. Folks like us do content. We can't always protect all those things. But, if you have something where you actually have a product, seek out if you can patent it, if you can copyright it. There's definitely value to that, which will protect you in the long run, whether that's design, if it's operation. You need to defend these things. Absolutely.
A big part of starting a business, I imagine, is having people around you that believe in you, that you believe in. So Scott, let's jump to you. So you started in early on with as an early employee in a startup.
Yep.
How important was it for you to really believe in their vision or mess with the vision, as they say on the internet?
Yeah, frankly, it was everything.
I was in a great position. I had choices, and going in with people that you trust matters a whole lot, and it mattered to me. And so I've heard this phrase before. It's better to be in a bad deal with good people than a good deal with bad people, that type of thing. So yeah, that's one of those. If I said that correctly, it's one of those things that's it's always played true to me. I'll tell you something else to your previous question. Having been on in the M&A world and buying smaller companies and startups, I'll tell you this, that we would always look for anything that was weird or funky, both from a systems point of view and also from a legal point of view. If there was something strange with a trademark term or a company name that might mean different things in different industries or whatever, that was, it was one of a whole checklist, frankly, of red flags. But if there are entrepreneurs in the audience that are thinking about getting started, the more kind of standard things that you do to get off on the right foot, the better. It just puts the odds in your favor. There's no guarantees in the world, but it puts odds in your favor.
Absolutely. And speaking of trademark, I started really young as a musician, and I got a record deal when I was like 17 years old, and didn't necessarily look at the contract the right way because I was 17. It was like my first year in college. And, when you're in college, you're eating top ramen and some company comes along and they say, hey, we're going to give you and your buddy $30,000. You think, oh, I've made it. Like, it's about to hit the fan now. Like, cars, houses, and as adults, you hear $30,000 and you go, ooh, well, I mean, that'd be pay my mortgage for a year, but, that's about it. But for the most part, when you're 17 and you're getting $30,000, you're like, well, I'm moving out of the dorms. It's about to pop off. But, and we even went to a lawyer, but, at 17, we were really arrogant. And, we thought we knew what we were doing, didn't listen to a lot of it. So I say all of that just to speak to about trademark and stuff. And Greg, you work with pretty high-profile clients. Are there times when there's certain things you have to step around or be careful of because of who they are?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times you have like NDAs and all different kinds of stuff that you have to be aware of. And actually, what's interesting is for most of the clients that I've started working with, even as high profile as they are, like there's like NDAs just about like not sharing information about them. But for I don't want to work with people that won't let me talk about the stuff I do, because like I want to be able to show off like the stuff that I've done. Like obviously the personal information, blah blah blah, that's one thing. So I've consulted with different lawyers on some before I sign anything, and for the most part, unless they're a lot of times too in startups, like people will before they even tell you anything, they want you to sign an NDA, which I've stopped doing. Like most people don't do anymore either. I feel like people have stopped signing that stuff. And then the other thing I deal with all the time is, with new clients, I had to figure out, you need to make a letter of agreement and a contract, an original contract that you can change for every client and kind of repurpose. And so that was something I didn't really understand how to do and had to figure out.
So Brian, I'll jump to you. If you could start your business all over again in today's world, what are some of the steps you would take, knowing what you know now versus knowing what you knew then?
So I'm a pretty excitable entrepreneur, and I always have in mind that I have this vision that I will see into the future and know what people will want on the web in 3 to 5 years. And sometimes that doesn't always work out. So last year I was presenting, I was on stage, and I was telling everybody about the future of infographics and how it was going into VR. Everybody here probably has tried VR to some extent, but it's like taking a self-defense class where you have to stand in the crane kick position and I can kick your ass then, but only then, right? Like it has to be practical to the world. So that stuff hasn't really arrived yet, and Pokemon Go kind of made $1 billion last year, but a lot of that stuff isn't really ready yet. So I feel like sometimes as entrepreneurs, we can sometimes get a little bit ahead of ourselves, and that's very dangerous because we have to remember practical reality in terms of what the market actually wants. And just a word on to pick up what you're saying on NDAs. I mean, we work with dozens of the Fortune 500s, and we're just NDA city, keeper of the internet secrets. There's plenty of things. I feel like there's a few different levels of things I can say. I can tell you some clients that we do who they are and exactly what we've done for them. There's some clients I can tell you who they are and nothing, and then there's some stuff that nobody's saying anything, and that's always interesting. And I think between things like that and master service agreements, you just have to read all of these things carefully, because as a small business, we're not banks, right? So sometimes if you just read some of the terms, you might not notice, but you know, if you're a net 90 and you have payroll and all of these things, you might want to go and negotiate. A lot of people don't realize that you can talk, there's people on the other end of that email, and you can talk to them and say, hey, I don't want to starve to death while I'm making your creative services. How about you whip out a credit card, or here's my wire information? And you know what? They like it. They like when you push that. I mean, I sometimes when we have questions about content, I say, get the legal team on the phone. Let's have at it. Because sometimes product managers, all these people, they don't even understand what corporate legal's problem is with some of these things. So we've untied arguments that people have been stuck with for years because they don't really necessarily understand the legal perspective. Sometimes if you just kind of get inside the content creation and legal side, as opposed to the legal side, it's very important to think about all these different kinds of things.
Scott, same question for you. Having started businesses before, what would you do differently, or what would you tell someone to do differently going into it now?
Oh, absolutely. So I'll repeat myself a little bit. Go in with good, solid people, and frankly, go in with people who've been there, done that, and maybe stepped on some of those landmines before. What's that other phrase that when the person with experience goes into business with a person with money, the person with money ends up with experience, and the person with experience ends up with the money. So that's another one.
I've never heard that one.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
That's a good one. That's a good one.
That's a good one. That's great. That's great. I'm going to remember that. Somebody tweet that out and mention me in the tweet. So launched by LegalShield. We'll just talk a little bit about that. Again, it provides services to help you not only start your business, but information along the way. How critical would something like that have been when you started your business initially?
Incredibly. There are a couple ways to start a startup. One way is you just start doing it, and then you realize 6 months, 12 months later that you've actually completely done it the wrong way, and untangling it is really, really difficult. The other way is that you walk into a very large law firm and you sign a very large retainer, and you almost never get what you need out the other side. So I think that both of those approaches are fundamentally flawed, and I think the best way is to speak to people who really have been through it. And I think as entrepreneurs, I feel it's my duty to help other people through the process. I've been lucky to raise millions of dollars of funding. I've been unlucky enough to go through and face death in the eye in running my own startup. And I think I would do people a tremendous disservice if I didn't share those stories. But I think if you're going through it and you're thinking about it, there are reasons that all those things are in contracts, and you want to understand them, you want to think through them. You also don't want to dwell on it and spend so much time on it that you never leave your bedroom with your concept. So I think it's very important to look both ways, to look in the mirror and to look forward, and to really make sure that you understand what legal is going to do to help you move your business forward, as opposed to just holding you back.
I'm going a little off script. Jeff, can I have you come up here? So, for those that don't know, Jeff is the man here. Jeff is the man here. So,
yeah, woo!
Have you been joining us? So, as a CEO, there's obviously a lot of responsibility on you as well. But in a sense, you're cultivating a culture, and you're cultivating a business in a way, in a similar way to a startup. So that's why I wanted to bring you up here, just because I wanted to get your perspective. If, as a CEO coming in and seeing how things operate now, how would you necessarily do things differently? And then as a follow-up question to that, I feel like I'm in the press corps now. As a follow-up question to that, earlier in your panel at the Marriott, I heard you talking about the underprivileged, those that don't have access to legal. And a big part of launch in my eyes, seems to help those that don't necessarily have $950 an hour. So I want to speak to, I guess, more of there's a thing my uncle always says: passion and purpose. Something that you're passionate about, and then there's also a purpose. So could you kind of speak to that passion and purpose of that of launch and why that matters for you?
Absolutely, and thank you. You know, I worked in corporate America for 17 years with Ford, Chrysler, and Microsoft, and then I took a 6-year midlife crisis and went into venture capital. And so I had the honor of serving with some startups, and I got the bug. So at LegalShield, we like to call ourselves a 45-year-old startup, and we try and take that mindset. And we're right in the middle of really trying to improve our culture by employing agile development and really just using agile to run the entire business. So we're still a work in progress, collaborative problem solving, et cetera, but we just think it's critical for fulfilling our mission. We are a mission-based culture. We believe in equal access to equal justice. For 45 years, we've been trying to serve those that either don't know what it means to, if you're getting hassled by the landlord or the insurance company or by your boss, that you have recourse, that you have the rights for representation. And so today we have 1.625 million members in North America. It's an all-time record. It's now growing every month, and our goal is to get 10 times bigger. We believe that that's just actually still the tip of the iceberg when you think about it. And we believe very strongly in being passion driven, but also being purpose driven for both. So between the agile and between our desire to add access to justice, you know, we now have turned our sights towards entrepreneurship. We have a wonderful small business legal plan, and it's a fantastic product, but we thought about those and the fact that we want to inspire entrepreneurs, and there's a gap there because you know, there are some great law firms you know, that charge a lot of money, tend to be focused in venture capital more on term sheets, you know, and more complicated. So just knowing, should I do an LLC, should I do a C Corp, an S Corp, and not try and research it on your own and make a mistake, but to have in 24 hours, talk to a lawyer, your law firm. And in fact, that's the key. In life, you don't need a lawyer. In life, you need a law firm, because it may be a different lawyer within the law firm as you evolve, but now you're their client. And as part of the product, you are a client for 90 days for the same price that it costs to do the same service by any of our competitors. So talking to a lawyer, being a member of the service, is where we thought we would be last to the dance, but maybe best dressed.
There you go. There you go. All right. So for the last question, we'll go down the line. Jeff, were you going to the last question? Come on, Jeff. Last question. If you could give, and all of you guys, if you give any advice to an entrepreneur, someone that's ready to start a business, just some like parting words of encouragement, one, and maybe a little bit of strategy if you have something.
Yeah, I mean, assemble the very best team that you can. People that you don't have to convince to show up to work, that you don't have to convince of your vision, that aren't just there to punch a clock, et cetera, et cetera. Assemble the very best team that you can. People that believe as you do. And a great product will cure just about everything, just like revenue cures just about everything. But having a great product and a great team, it sounds simple, but it's really complex to get right.
So first, don't be an entrepreneur. But nobody left. So if you're still with me, you're okay. A lot of people who come from corporate America, I spent some time in corporate myself, are used to being a subject matter expert. There's a big difference between being an SME and being an entrepreneur. Because if you're a subject matter expert, you're used to corporate or wherever you work that takes care of everything for you, right? You've got an HR department, you've got health insurance, you've got everything ready for you. Payroll, you don't have to chase people down with a baseball bat when they don't pay you. Not that I encourage any of that. Again, legal has advised against violence. So all of these things are very important. So the other thing that I would say, aside from the fact that you really, truly have to believe in it, is don't just go with the hot trends. Don't look at, here's the top 20 things that are going to be, the next great thing, the next unicorn. You personally have to deeply believe in it, because there will be hard days. Hopefully not too often, but you can guarantee it. No matter if you just started last week or, this August, my company turns 12 years old, so we're a 12-year-old startup too. We're almost in our teenage years, so watch out. It's just so important to deeply believe in it, because that's all you have at the end of the day. You have to have that passion, and you have to relay that passion on everyone who starts with you in the beginning, and ongoing, you have to bake that into your culture. It's super important.
I would just piggyback onto that with the idea that it really has to be something that you're passionate about, because like what's the saying about entrepreneurship, where it's like entrepreneurs are people willing to work 120 hours a week to avoid working a 9 to 5, right? So like it definitely has to be something that you're passionate about. And then the other thing I would say is, you just have to actually do it, because like even I sometimes spend way too much time talking about ideas and talking about things and just not actually doing it. And so that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, it's really focusing on something that you care about and want to throw yourself into, but then making sure that on the other side of that there's a market that you validated. Don't go and raise money from somebody else unless you've actually gone out there and you know that there are people who are going to buy what you're going to build. And you can have those conversations early on. You can say, look, this is what I'm thinking about. Do you care more about this? Do you care more about that? You can do simple surveys. I think even now in Facebook, you can do like a simple Facebook survey and just sort of like, you can even sort of curate that audience and figure out like, oh, I want this type of audience to answer this question and figure that out. But if you build something amazing and nobody needs to buy it, then you haven't accomplished a goal as an entrepreneur. You've done a great personal project, but you haven't actually done it. So I think really focusing in on what big, hairy, ugly problems you've seen firsthand that you think you can find a better way to solve.
First off, just thank you guys. I mean, you're awesome, and you make me feel like there's a lot of hope for innovation, and just very proud to have you here today. I would just recommend actually Tim Ferriss's new book, Tools of Titans, and I'm drawn, number one, it's beautiful, positive mental attitude and personal development. It's bite-sized, but in there, it's interesting, there's a comment about Jeff Bezos. He says, a lot of entrepreneurs say, what can I change? How is the world going to change in 10 years? But Jeff Bezos says, what is not going to change in 10 years? That's what I want to stay on, and I think it's exactly this point. Where there's pain, where there's suffering, where there's discomfort and unpleasantness, things that you think suck in your life, solve that problem, okay? Because it's real, right? Solving problems is the fastest way to be able to add value. And Ann Winblad, I'll end on this. Ann Winblad, a great founding woman within venture capital, said last year that technology's really only touched 20% of business, whether you look at a vertical or a horizontal. There's a long way to run. There's a lot of value that can be added through entrepreneurship. So thank you.
That's awesome. And I'll end with just, it sounds super cliche, but just don't be afraid to fail. Take risk. You'll be surprised with what you learn from failure if you look at it as a learning opportunity as opposed to looking at it as actual failure. With that said, guys, please give a round of applause for the panel. You guys, absolutely amazing. Thank you guys so much for coming. Really appreciate you guys. I'm Jacques Slade. We'll be wandering around the room if you have any other questions for any of us. So yeah, thank you guys for coming. We appreciate it. Thank you to LegalShield. Thank you, Jeff. We appreciate you guys. All right.
Thank you.
So, you guys read the upside.